The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome to the O Show. I'm Laura Babcock and joined as always by Loren Laura. We'll get to say hi to Loren in just a moment. It's been a sad week in Hamilton politics. Of course, as you know, we have lost the Honourable Lincoln Alexander. He passed away at 90 just a few days ago, and right now is lying in repose at Hamilton City Hall. And we'll do a little bit more on the legacy. There's a live shot there for you. We'll do a little bit more on the legacy of Lincoln Alexander as one of our first topics tonight. But we also lost Reg Wheeler. He was a councilman for 23 years, known as Mr. Hamilton. And so really, our greatest Hamiltonian, as was voted by people in the city, Lincoln Alexander, passed away, and Mr. Hamilton, all in 1 week. But it does certainly tell us just how special public servants are, people who put their careers to helping the city. We critique them a lot on this program. It's part of what we do, but we certainly respect their service. So before I get to the show topics, Loren, I just wanted to get you to weigh in on this. And how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm all right. I only know Reg by reputation, and my heart goes out to his family. And I knew Linc, a good friend of my dad, and spent plenty of time with him. And yeah, an absolute character, great guy. Sad day for all of Canada. Absolutely.
Linc certainly made Hamilton look great. He achieved so much, and we'll be getting into his legacy. We're also going to talk on this program about an O Show exclusive. We've got some news for you that we're going to share, and you might have heard about this from the CBC coverage today, but there are 5 storefronts right in Gore Park that are planned to be demolished and rebuilt into condos and a supermarket. We'll talk about where they are and how we feel about that. And we're also going to talk about teen suicide. As you know, there was an anti-bullying movement day last week. What can we actually do to prevent these suicides that are happening? We'll get into all of that, plus more. The way to go is a lot on today's O Show. So let's start off the top with the legacy of Lincoln Alexander. Can you give us some of the facts on this, Laura?
Of course. Linc's legacy. Lincoln Alexander was the first black member of the House of Commons. In 1985, he became Ontario's first black lieutenant governor. Linc is lying in repose at City Hall today till Thursday. A state funeral will be held at Hamilton Place on Friday.
So many people, of course, have been flooding in with tributes about Lincoln Alexander. I had a chance to speak on the Bill Kelly Show about it when we all found out the news the other day. And I had a brief couple of meetings with Linc over the years, but he formed an impression on all of us. What we thought we would do in tribute, rather than share our stories about Linc, because we've heard so many good ones already, is we want to look at what might a legacy be of Lincoln Alexander. And given his achievements, and we've also had some viewers who have been saying recently, you know, can we talk about more diversity in politics, and how do we get other people, to visible minorities and others, to be a part of the political scene? Even just this past weekend, Lauren, I had the chance to speak at a Women in Leadership conference that was held at City Hall. And we got into discussions about, you know, how to empower women to get involved in politics as well. So do you think that we need to somehow actively work harder to make sure that our political representatives actually represent who we are as a population in Hamilton?
I don't want to. Yeah, that's too direct of a question, and this is too nuancy of a subject. I think whether it's considered trivia or not, Hamilton West giving us Linc and the trailblazingness of being the first black to do the following, but Hamilton West also gave Canada Ellen Fairclough, and as the first woman as well. So trivia aside, I think that's pretty nifty that the same riding produced both of those. I think it's important to consider that when Linc first became an MP, he did not rise through the ranks of the black community and assert himself as a black leader. He was a mainstream leader. He was a lawyer and a part of the Hamilton community. I think there's some difficulty in terms of how people are trying to take different constituencies and find leadership from within them. I don't think we have an issue with women. I don't. We have at the better levels of politics, being provincial and federal, we've got a lot of women elected right here in this area. Women are, first you need to want to run, then you need to know how to run and get yourself elected and access to money. And if Horwath can do it, and Brenda Johnson can do it, and Margaret McCarthy can do it, I don't really see the barriers. I see a bigger barrier on why a woman would want to than why a woman is prevented from.
And what's that barrier?
That I just don't think it's that good of a job, especially at a municipal council level.
Well, there's certainly a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of public scrutiny.
Not a whole lot of dough.
No, not a lot of money.
No.
But I think that women are great at sacrifice and they're great at handling criticism. I think where the issue comes down to it is maybe there's a lot of other responsibilities that they're dealing with, and you have to, as you know, Loren, it's a tough game. Women are certainly up for the game, as we've seen with the examples of Ellen Fairclough and Andrea Horwath. But I think a lot of it has to do with people kind of see what opportunities are in front of them by what maybe even they see on television, for instance, right? So if you never see somebody who looks like you on television, you might not feel like you can ever get there. And one woman asked me at the conference, she said, you know, Laura, I'm a visible minority. Could I ever be on television? And I said, absolutely you can. I know you don't see a lot of that, but that's changing. You know, and you weren't able to have that modeled for you, but it doesn't mean that it's not changing. But I said to her, you know, a lot of people would tell me, or I felt at one time, that unless I looked a certain way, had a certain weight, had a certain hair color, had a certain everything, I couldn't be on television either. And so if you don't see somebody modeling the career for you on TV or in politics, if you don't see women in politics, if you don't see people from your background in politics or visible minorities or people who look like you, it's difficult, I think, for children to think it's a possibility for them to even get there, Loren.
I get that, but I do think we're bringing up a new generation of children who are not so enamored. I think that today's kids that see a black president of the United States just, you know, what's all the fuss about? So a black guy's president. That it's lost on you if you're significantly younger than us, Laura.
Well, I think that's great. I mean,
yeah, of course.
I think that's wonderful if that's what's happening.
If you look outside council chambers at the previous councils, going back to once the city was first incorporated, city council today is insanely ethnic and diverse compared to what we were not that long ago.
Insanely ethnic and diverse? We have the same council?
You got 3 women and a whack of Italian guys. And once upon a time, not that long ago, all middle-aged Scottish guys.
Okay,
That's
I gotcha. I gotcha. So we're progressing.
It's incremental,
slowly.
of course.
Right. Larry was our first Italian mayor, correct?
No,
elected
elected
Italian mayor. Elected Italian mayor. Vince Agra was mayor, but it was after big coughs.
But when Vince Agra was on council, he was a bit of an oddity. He was a trailblazer for the Italian community. Look at all the Italians we've got now on present council and formerly and otherwise. Nobody even would flinch at that. An elected Italian? Well, of course, but once upon a time that was pretty odd too.
So, you know, I think that the question is a valid one, and as I said, it's been submitted by viewers, and I certainly heard it at the conference. So, you know, you can't artificially model the opportunity. Some people look at having quotas, right? They want to get an X amount of women or whatever in. I've never been a huge fan of quotas because I think that, you know, while it's great to cast the net out wider than just the group in front of you and say, you know, we are open to having women, we are open to having people from other communities, even though you don't see yourself represented, we want you. I like that approach, but not when it's an actual quota, right? At that point, to me, it seems a little bit artificial, and people really want to do politics to be in it, as we talked about. It's a difficult game.
The only way you're going to get more women and more visible minorities elected is to have more of them run. And an awful lot of, it's a much skewed higher percentage locally of women who run and win.
But how do you get them to run?
But you don't get them. Women need to want to and be electable. And I don't think that has anything to do with gender. I think women need to make that choice, and visible minorities need to come forward and make that choice and do the same thing that the 1850s middle-aged bearded white man did then, and get your profile and get your finances and run a decent campaign.
I don't think it's probably as easy as that. I mean, the example that you gave in the 1850s, they were the majority, they had the power, they had the access to the funding. I think for especially people from new communities, getting that kind of power base, getting that name recognition, getting that kind of financial support, it isn't easy. And, you know, I'm aware of the irony, of course, that you and I are sitting here talking about minorities when we're not, clearly.
I'm a minority. Come on now.
My point is this, Loren, is that I think it's more difficult than you've stated. It's not that easy. I think there is still an uphill battle, and the awareness of it is part of it. And Linc's legacy, I hope, will be not dissimilar to what you were saying about Barack Obama, is that look what he achieved. You know, he made it happen. He can do it. And, you know, he's made us all so proud as a community that hopefully that'll be inspiration for children and for adults now who say, you know what, I'm inspired by Lincoln Alexander. I can break through barriers that I perceive as well. We don't have the answers for this one, but we wanted to put it out there because I think it's important. And I just want to, we'll take one more look at Lincoln Alexander in repose there and thank him for his service to our community and let you know that Cable 14 will start the coverage of his funeral at 2 p.m. on Friday. That's this Friday, so you can watch all of that. And he's just behind the glass there inside of Council Chambers. So thanks, Linc. Okay, let's get on to our next topic. It's something hyper-local, and we've got an exclusive on it. As you know, the Linwood-Charlton situation has been going on for some time. And we've talked about on this program what was happening at the Ontario Municipal Board, that Human Rights Ontario wanted to get involved, and of course the community campaign, the SOS Stomp Out Stigma, to try to show support for the girls of Linwood-Charlton. Now we have had the councillor who has that ward has seen some of the campaign conversations that are taking place on the Facebook page and has decided to weigh into the campaign. Only the Osho has these comments from Councillor Jason Farr. This is just a small bit of them, and we are going to post the full script on the SOS page this evening so that everybody can have a full look at his comments on this very important local issue. But Loren, if you can give us only the facts on this directly from his mouth and campaign.
Our Osho exclusive SOS Stomp Out Stigma t-shirt campaign shows support for girls at Linwood-Charlton after they were called, quote, undesirables, and sends a message that all persons with mental disabilities are valued in Hamilton.
Now, this is Councillor Farr's comments.
Unfortunately, the Spectator chose to highlight the undesirable quote, in my opinion, out of context. The word was attributed to one Corktown resident who was speaking at the time to council about chasing undesirable crackheads out of their neighborhood. Unfortunately, this statement has become the main focus for those who opposed radial separation. That's from Councillor Farr.
Your thoughts on this? On his statement?
Whether or not that was the word is kind of irrelevant. It's the point. Sometimes a campaign gravitates to a thought. Whether it is an accurate attribution of a quote or not is really not the point here. The issue is a little bigger than the word, in my opinion.
And I think also was the fact that that word was repeated, not just by the Spectator's coverage, but wasn't it also included in a staff report that went back to council, and Councillor Clark was concerned about that. I agree with you. I think people are focusing in on that word because it seems incredibly negative and incredibly unfair. Not for 1 minute have I, or I hope anybody else, ever said that Councillor Farr used that word, or that, you know, other councillors who are defending this bylaw and this decision and their tactics at the OMB. I don't think that they feel that way about the girls at Linwood-Charlton, and I certainly think that they believe that this is simply a planning issue. Where I come from on this, and I've stated this many times now, is that yes, it is a planning issue. It's a bylaw that needs to be looked at, and in other jurisdictions has been looked at and has been, you know, taken apart because of these challenges to it. But it's also about the people who are involved. And if I hear one more time, it's not about the girls, but the girls live there. And the girls were called these names. The girls were, you know, the comment was made, unfortunately, by a councillor, well, if these were pedophiles, you know, would there be all this community uproar? Of course not, because these are young girls, and this is the best place to raise a child, according to our council vision. So I think that it can be both an issue of a bylaw that is a little antiquated and needs to be reviewed, something that was necessary at amalgamation, but is obviously not a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. And there can be an awareness that the way that we talk about these children impacts them. You know?
I really want to weigh in just a little bit in the councillor's defense. Jay is a friend of mine, as he's a friend of yours, as he's a friend to the Cable 14 viewership. And we who know Jason Farr knows that he has as soft a heart as anyone on council.
Well, he grew up in the Boys and Girls Clubs.
He knows the plight of these girls and girls like them and issues like this. I would say better than anybody else on council. He must, and truly I have not spoken to Jason about this issue or otherwise. I'm sure this is a very difficult position for him to take, and I really, really hope that compromise is found, as there are two sides and the residents do have something to say here too. And I think that Jason Farr is the best councillor to be in this position, defending both of it, because he is well aware.
I'm so glad you said that, because, you know, we don't have to take this to the OMB. It doesn't have to get as ugly as it's been getting. You know, the T-shirt campaign is not just, I'm sure the OMB will work it out, or council can hopefully find a negotiation that works for everybody. Nobody wants a protracted fight, because the only people who suffer in this are those girls and other people with mental disabilities who might feel as though they're somehow marginalized by this negative conversation that's happening. The whole point of the T-shirt campaign is just to say, don't feel that way. You're highly valued. And I know that Jason Farr would, feels that people with mental disabilities are highly valued. So I'm hoping, to your point, Loren, there can be some kind of a resolution and negotiation to this before we get all the way up to the OMB. Okay, we've got to move on from this, but we will post Jason Farr's entire comments, and I think it's quite lengthy, on the SOS page, and you can always ask to be part of that group, and you can read the whole thing. I'll even post it on mine, and anybody can see that as well. Okay, moving on to our next issue. This kind of cut us off guard this morning. Good reporting by Paul Wilson at CBC Hamilton, and that was that let's take the facts. I'll take them from you, Loren. We'll get into the gore. Goring the gore.
Goring of the gore. Well, according to CBC Hamilton, 5 storefronts on the south side of Gore Park will be empty. Developers want to tear down buildings to put in a condo tower and a grocery store.
So these buildings that we're talking about, yeah, those ones right there. When I heard this, I was shocked. Because with all of the remediation of the Gore and the whole plan on the Gore and getting the buses out of the Gore and creating that pedestrian walkabout that we've been working on for years, looking at those buildings, going into those restaurants and bars, I thought that was part of the plan. So to lose that beautiful historic frontage there, I don't know. I'm troubled by it, and I asked Matt Jelly on Twitter today, who is obviously was instrumental in getting the Lister block revitalized. I asked him, can anything be done about this? And he told me that he doesn't think so, that we need a heritage strategy in the city so that we don't lose more beautiful buildings.
Right, they're on the important list. They are not designated buildings. Mr. Blanchard is the developer and realtor that owns these buildings. Blanchard has owned these buildings for a long, long time. They were terrible, and you couldn't rent them out when they were purchased. But what I heard in a radio interview on Bill Kelly today, Mr. Blanchard explained that the new Gore Park plan has hurt his tenants terribly by losing the car traffic, by losing the parking spots out front.
Doesn't it feel to you like we're finding about this too little too late? Almost tantamount to the school board downtown. I mean, those buildings I think we all cherish. I was looking forward to them being part of what would make that a destination. And Mr. Blanchard, if they're not designated, has the right to do with them, I guess, according to zoning, what he wants to.
Right, but he's also suggesting that nothing is imminent. But what I think is important, though, is that the new Gore Park is actually backfiring on the kind of businesses, the coffee shop and otherwise. I'm not sure whether it's reasonable to expect Mr. Blanchard to speak on their behalf, but he certainly did so on Bill Kelly's show. And they don't want to be there anymore in the new Gore Park.
Do you know what? We'll stay on top of this one. I want to get to a quick thank you to our sponsors, to Pennington's, and of course to Madison Avenue, who did your hair last week, and everybody commented it looked good. And I saw Reno and told them that. So thank you guys. This last topic is important, and it is, of course, teen suicides. There was the story of the girl who committed suicide in Vancouver and did a YouTube video explaining that she'd been bullied and couldn't take it anymore. Quickly, only the facts on this one, Loren.
Sure. Teen suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among teenagers in Canada. Bullying has been cited recently by a number of teenagers as the reason they committed suicide.
So, obviously, the advent of social media, cyberbullying adds a whole new weight to this. Certainly, we didn't see numbers like this when we were in high school, Loren. I do think that the problem is much more severe than it was for probably a lot of different reasons, but what can be done?
I'm shocked every time it seems like I turn on the news. There's a new one every week. I'm not sure that we're moving in the right direction by addressing all of this as bullying issues, and that's and I say that for a couple of reasons. One, that's not working, and clearly it's not working. These kids are not just bullied. These kids, in order to make the devastating decisions that they do, they have some mental illness beyond just being...
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because CBC Hamilton is doing a mental illness forum at Mohawk College tomorrow to address this issue with teenagers. And I heard a couple of things that I just want to weigh in on this. One is, of course, those 8 girls were arrested in London for assaulting and bullying a student. And while you never want to see a child arrested, I think it sent a message that some of these actions are actually assault. They're illegal and they're incredibly damaging. So there's the mental health piece, and thank goodness we're having that conversation. There's also the fact that there has to be some consequences there has to be accountability. But let me add one other thing I heard on the Bill Kelly show. A doctor, a family therapist was saying, there's a bystander effect where, because so many people are talking about bullying and the kids can go anonymously to the school, you think that it'll be dealt with, instead of standing up for the child, standing up for your friends and saying, we don't like bullies, we're not going to let people in our school be bullied. So I think we all have more we can be doing on this.
I can really appreciate the seriousness of this issue, and I mean no disrespect, and I'm going to try and choose my words carefully here.
Please
but
do.
what I think might be at least a small part of this overall problem is that when a suicide occurs within a community and within a high school, the amount of love and attention that is garnered upon the person that has passed makes it seem very attractive for the next person.
So I think that's a great point, is that we can't, in expressing our concern after
we
the
need
fact.
to love people while they're still here.
Exactly, and that's actually what this therapist said as well. Okay, we obviously can't deal with all of that issue, but we wanted to bring it up because it's important. And if you are out there as a teenager and you're feeling like you are lost and it's the best option out, it isn't. There are people who are there to help you, I promise. So please, please, please don't go to that decision. It's not good for anybody, especially you. Okay, let's get to the way to goes. We'll end this on a positive note.
Please.
It's been a somber show so far. Way to go ahead.
Yeah, the McMaster Marauders, for their undefeated regular football season. We hope for another Vanier Cup. Way to go, Mac.
Okay, and way to go to HiveX for bringing together Hamilton's young entrepreneurs. That's the hashtag. They were trending 3rd in Canada, and they gave a group hug to the city, I think I read in the media. So good job.
Way to go for Bruce for packing Cops Coliseum, putting on a great show.
Yeah, you had fun at that concert. You texted me.
Sure did. I sure did, yes.
I was celebrating my son's 4th birthday, couldn't be there. Happy birthday, Darrow. And way to go. Final way to go today goes to the Women in Leadership Conference at City Hall. I know the YWCA was a part of that, and other groups. They're empowering women. It was a pleasure to be a part of that. Lots of good stuff happening in Hamilton, especially a new Laircast season just started. You can listen to new Laircast with Joey Coleman talking about his not-for-profit media station venture that he's doing. And we're told, we had an expert in the Laircast last night, a communications professor, and he said he thinks Joey is the first in Canada to be doing something at this level. He's got a campaign to support him. Listen to thelaircast.com. We'll have it up at the end of this program, and you can check that out. Thank you so much for watching the O Show. Thanks, Loren. And here's the tweet of the week, and please have a good one.